Welcome to our channel. Today we dive into the shocking story of a wealthy man who faked his bankruptcy to test his friends. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you'd like to support our content, consider donating through the link in the pinned comment. Now, let's enjoy the tale. Marcus Blackwood had it all. At 45, he was the CEO of Blackwood Enterprises, a multinational corporation that had its fingers in every pie imaginable. From tech startups to real estate empires, Marcus's influence stretched far and wide. His penthouse apartment overlooked Central Park, offering a breathtaking view of the city he'd conquered. On this particular evening, Marcus stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, swirling a glass of 30-year-old scotch. The amber liquid caught the dying light of the sun, casting a warm glow across his ruggedly handsome features. He should have been content, but a nagging emptiness gnawed at him. Another successful quarter. "Sir," his assistant, Sarah, announced as she entered the room. "The board is thrilled." Marcus nodded absently, his mind elsewhere. "Thank you, Sarah. That'll be all for today." As the door closed behind her, Marcus's thoughts drifted to his upcoming birthday celebration. The guest list read like a who's who of New York's elite: politicians, celebrities, fellow business tycoons. But how many of them were truly his friends? The question had been haunting him for months. Sure, he had acquaintances by the dozens, people who laughed at his jokes and eagerly accepted his invitations. But would they stand by him if his fortune disappeared overnight? Marcus's mind wandered to his humble beginnings. He'd grown up in a working-class neighborhood in Brooklyn, the son of a factory worker and a waitress. Through sheer determination and a bit of luck, he'd clawed his way to the top. But along the way, he'd lost touch with the people who knew him before he was Marcus Blackwood, billionaire. His phone buzzed, interrupting his reverie. It was a text from Chad, his self-proclaimed best friend and fellow entrepreneur. "Yo, Marcus, can't wait for the party, man. It's gonna be epic." Marcus sighed. Chad had latched onto him shortly after his first big success, always ready with a slap on the back and an invitation to the hottest clubs. But was there any substance to their friendship? As he stared at the message, a wild idea began to form in Marcus's mind. What if he could test the loyalty of his so-called friends? What if he could strip away the trappings of wealth and see who would stand by him when he had nothing? The more he thought about it, the more appealing the idea became. It would be the ultimate social experiment, a way to separate the wheat from the chaff. But how to pull it off? Marcus spent the next few hours pacing his penthouse, his mind racing with possibilities. By the time the sun rose over the New York skyline, he had the beginnings of a plan. He would stage a spectacular fall from grace, a financial collapse so complete that it would shock the business world. He'd liquidate his visible assets, move out of his penthouse, and present himself as a man on the brink of ruin. Of course, he'd need help to pull it off. Marcus picked up his phone and dialed a number he rarely used. "Hello?" a groggy voice answered. "Jack, it's Marcus. I need your help with something. Unconventional." Jack Reeves had been Marcus's accountant for years, one of the few people who knew the true extent of his wealth. More importantly, he was one of the few people Marcus trusted implicitly. "I'm listening," Jack said, fully awake now. As Marcus outlined his plan, he felt a surge of excitement. For the first time in years, he felt truly alive. The game was about to begin, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Little did Marcus know that his elaborate ruse would set in motion a chain of events that would change his life forever, revealing truths about friendship, loyalty, and the human heart that he never could have anticipated. The news broke on a crisp Monday morning. Blackwood Enterprises in free fall, the headline screamed. Stock prices plummeted as rumors of mismanagement and fraud swirled through Wall Street. Marcus Blackwood, the golden boy of the business world, had apparently been playing fast and loose with company funds. In reality, it was all smoke and mirrors. Marcus, with Jack's expert help, had orchestrated a masterful illusion of financial ruin. They had temporarily shifted assets, created shell companies, and leaked carefully crafted evidence to the press, to the outside world. It appeared that Marcus Blackwood's empire was crumbling. The reaction was swift and merciless. Marcus's phone buzzed incessantly with calls and messages from panicked investors, furious board members, and curious journalists. He ignored them all, playing the part of a man in crisis. His first test came that very afternoon. Chad, his party-loving best friend, burst into his office unannounced. "Dude, what the hell is going on?" Chad demanded. His usually perfectly coiffed hair disheveled. "Tell me it's not true." Marcus looked up from his desk, his face a mask of despair. "It's worse than they're saying, Chad. I've lost everything." Chad's face went pale. "Everything? But what about the party, the yacht, the... Canceled," Marcus said flatly. "I can't afford any of it anymore." For a moment, Chad just stood there, mouth agape. Then, without another word, he turned and left. Marcus watched him go, a mixture of disappointment and bitter amusement churning in his gut. One friend down. How many more to go? Over the next few days, Marcus's world shrunk dramatically. He moved out of his penthouse, taking up residence in a modest apartment in Queens. His designer suits were replaced by off-the-rack clothes, his luxury cars traded for public transportation. The invitations that had once flooded his inbox dried up overnight. His social media accounts, once overflowing with likes and comments, became ghost towns. It was as if Marcus Blackwood had become invisible, but not everyone abandoned him. To his surprise, Sarah, his assistant, showed up at his new apartment a week after the news broke. "I don't care what they're saying," she said firmly. "I know you, Marcus. You're a good man, and I want to help however I can." Her loyalty touched him deeply. And for a moment, Marcus was tempted to reveal the truth. But he held back, curious to see how far her support would go. As the days turned into weeks, Marcus found himself adapting to his new, simpler life. He cooked his own meals, did his own laundry, and took long walks in the park. It was during one of these walks that he had an unexpected encounter. "Marcus, is that you?" He turned to see a vaguely familiar face. It took him a moment to place her. Emily Chen, a girl he'd known in high school. They'd been friends once, before life had taken them in different directions. "Emily," he said, surprised. "It's been a long time." Her eyes were full of concern. "I saw the news. Are you okay?" For the first time since his plan began, Marcus felt a flicker of guilt. Emily's concern seemed genuine, untainted by any ulterior motives. He found himself opening up to her, sharing sanitized versions of his troubles. As they talked, walking through the park, Marcus felt a connection he hadn't experienced in years. Emily listened without judgment, offering words of encouragement and practical advice. By the time they parted ways, Marcus had a coffee date scheduled for the following week. That night, lying in his small, unfamiliar bed, Marcus's mind raced. The experiment was revealing truths he hadn't anticipated. Yes, many of his fair-weather friends had abandoned him at the first sign of trouble, but he was also discovering kindness and loyalty in unexpected places. As he drifted off to sleep, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his elaborate ruse was spiraling beyond his control. Little did he know that the biggest challenges and the most shocking revelations were yet to come. The stage was set for a journey that would test not just the loyalty of his friends, but the very foundations of Marcus's understanding of wealth, success, and human nature. As he closed his eyes, the words of his late father echoed in his mind. "Be careful what you wish for, son. You just might get it." As weeks turned into months, Marcus settled into his new life with surprising ease. The initial shock of his downfall had faded, replaced by a quiet routine that he found oddly comforting. His regular coffee dates with Emily became a highlight, a reminder of simpler times before wealth had complicated his relationships. One rainy Tuesday, as Marcus was leaving the local diner where he now took his lunch, he quite literally bumped into someone from his past. "Watch where you're going, buddy," a gruff voice exclaimed. Marcus looked up to see a face he hadn't seen in years. Mike Donovan, his old college roommate. Recognition dawned in Mike's eyes. "Marcus Blackwood, is that really you?" Marcus braced himself for the usual mix of pity and schadenfreude he'd come to expect. Instead, Mike's face split into a wide grin. "Man, it's good to see you," Mike exclaimed, pulling Marcus into a bear hug. "I've been trying to get in touch since I heard the news, but all your numbers were disconnected." Surprised by the warmth of the greeting, Marcus found himself agreeing to grab a beer with Mike. As they sat in a dingy bar that Marcus would never have set foot in during his CEO days, Mike filled him in on the last 2 decades. "Life's been a roller coaster." "Man," Mike said, taking a swig of his beer. "Lost my job during the recession, almost lost my house, but I got back on my feet. Started a small construction company. It ain't glamorous, but it pays the bills." As they talked, Marcus felt a genuine connection rekindling. Mike didn't seem to care about his fall from grace. He was just happy to reconnect with an old friend. "Listen," Mike said as they were leaving, "I could use some help with the business. Nothing fancy. Just some basic accounting and client management. You interested?" Marcus was taken aback. It was the first job offer he'd received since his bankruptcy. More than that, it was a gesture of trust from someone who knew him before he was wealthy. Touched, Marcus agreed to start the following week. Working for Mike's small construction company was a far cry from running a multinational corporation. But Marcus found it oddly satisfying. He streamlined processes, negotiated better deals with suppliers, and even donned a hard hat to visit construction sites. One evening, as they were closing up the office, Mike turned to Marcus with a serious expression. "You know, I always thought you were destined for great things, but seeing you now, how you've handled all this, I think this might be the best version of you I've ever known." The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. For the first time, he felt the full weight of his deception. These people, Mike, Emily, even Sarah, were showing him genuine friendship and respect, and it was all based on a lie. The guilt gnawed at him, but so did a new fear. If he revealed the truth now, would he lose these newfound connections? The friendships he was building felt more real, more valuable than anything he'd had in his wealthy days. As Marcus grappled with his internal conflict, external forces were conspiring to complicate matters further. Unbeknownst to him, his elaborate ruse had caught the attention of some very interested parties. One crisp autumn morning, as Marcus was walking to work, a sleek black car pulled up beside him. The window rolled down to reveal a face he recognized from countless news reports. Senator William Harris, one of the most powerful men in Washington. "Mr. Blackwood," the senator said smoothly, "I wonder if I might have a word." Puzzled and slightly alarmed, Marcus got into the car. As they drove through the city, Senator Harris laid out a proposition that would turn Marcus's world upside down once again. "We've been watching you, Mr. Blackwood," the senator said. "Your fall from grace, your resilience. It's impressed a lot of people. We think you might be just the man we need for a rather delicate situation." Marcus listened with growing astonishment as the senator outlined a complex web of corporate corruption and political intrigue. They wanted Marcus to go undercover, to use his business acumen and his newfound everyman status to infiltrate a group of companies suspected of massive fraud. "Why me?" Marcus asked, his mind reeling. The senator's smile was cold. "Because, Mr. Blackwood, you've already proven yourself an expert at deception. We know about your little R experiment. The question is, are you willing to use those skills for a greater good?" As the car pulled up to his workplace, Marcus felt as if the ground was shifting beneath his feet. He had started this journey to test his friends, but now he was the one being tested. The choice he made next would not only affect his life, but potentially the lives of millions. The senator handed him a card. "Think it over, but don't take too long. Time is of the essence." As Marcus watched the car drive away, he realized that his simple experiment had spiraled into something far beyond his control. The lines between truth and deception, right and wrong, were blurring. And the stakes? They were higher than he could have ever imagined. Little did Marcus know that this was just the beginning of a series of events that would challenge everything he thought he knew about himself, his friends, and the world he lived in. Marcus spent the next few days in a daze, the senator's proposition weighing heavily on his mind. His simple life, which had become surprisingly comfortable, now felt like a thin veneer over a world of complex moral dilemmas. One evening, as he sat in his small apartment mulling over his options, there was a knock at the door. To his surprise, it was Sarah, his former assistant. "We need to talk," she said, her usually calm demeanor replaced by obvious anxiety. "Not here. It's not safe." Intrigued and slightly alarmed, Marcus followed her to a nearby park. As they walked, Sarah revealed a truth that shook Marcus to his core. "Your bankruptcy wasn't as secret as you thought," she said in a low voice. "I've known from the beginning, but that's not important now. What's important is that you've stumbled into something much bigger than you realize." Sarah explained that she wasn't just an assistant. She was an undercover agent for a secret government task force investigating corporate corruption at the highest levels. Blackwood Enterprises had been on their radar for years, not because of Marcus, but because of some of his board members and their connections to international criminal organizations. "We've been using your experiment as cover to dig deeper," Sarah admitted. "But now, with Senator Harris involved, things have become complicated." Marcus's head was spinning. "Are you saying the senator is involved in this corruption?" Sarah's expression was grim. "We're not sure yet. That's where you come in. We need you to accept his offer. To go deeper undercover, but this time, you'll be working for us." The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. His fake bankruptcy had led to a real undercover operation, but the stakes were now far higher than testing friendships. This was about exposing a rot that ran deep in the foundations of corporate America. After a sleepless night, Marcus made his decision. He contacted Senator Harris and accepted the offer. Within days, he was briefed on his new identity, Marcus Green, a financial consultant hired to help restructure a group of companies that were, on the surface, pillars of the community. As Marcus delved into his new role, he found himself in a world far murkier than he had ever imagined. Behind the facade of charitable donations and public works, he uncovered a web of money laundering, insider trading, and even darker crimes. His investigation brought him into contact with some of the most powerful people in the country. CEOs, politicians, even religious leaders, all seemed to be connected to this vast conspiracy. And at the center of it all was a name that kept cropping up: the Phoenix Group. As Marcus dug deeper, he realized that the Phoenix Group wasn't just another corporation. It was a shadow organization that had its tendrils in everything from Wall Street to Washington. And some of the names involved were shockingly familiar. One night, as Marcus was poring over some encrypted files Sarah had provided, he came across a document that made his blood run cold. There, listed as a key member of the Phoenix Group, was a name he knew all too well: Jack Reeves, his trusted accountant and the man who had helped him orchestrate his fake bankruptcy. The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. Had Jack been playing him all along? Was his entire life, even before the fake bankruptcy, a carefully constructed lie? As Marcus grappled with this betrayal, he received an urgent message from Sarah. His cover had been compromised. The Phoenix Group knew who he really was, and they were coming for him. In a panic, Marcus grabbed what he could and fled his apartment. As he raced through the dark streets, his mind was a whirlwind of questions and fears. Who could he trust now? How deep did this deception go? Just as he thought he had given his pursuers the slip, a car screeched to a halt beside him. The door flew open, and a familiar voice called out, "Get in if you want to live." To his shock, Marcus found himself face to face with Chad, the fair-weather friend who had abandoned him at the first sign of trouble. But the Chad he saw now was different. Gone was the carefree party boy, replaced by a man with a steely determination in his eyes. "There's no time to explain," Chad said as he gunned the engine. "But you're not the only one who's been keeping secrets." Marcus. As they sped through the night, Marcus realized that his journey of deception had led him to a truth far more shocking than he could have ever imagined, and the revelations were only just beginning. The city lights blurred as Chad expertly maneuvered through the late-night traffic. Marcus's mind raced, trying to process the whirlwind of revelations. "I don't understand," Marcus finally managed to say. "You left. You abandoned me when I needed friends the most. Chad's grip tightened on the steering wheel. That was part of my cover. I'm CIA, Marcus. Have been for years. The revelation hit Marcus like a thunderbolt. CIA, but all those parties, the carefree lifestyle. The perfect cover for gathering intel on the rich and powerful, Chad explained. Including you, initially. But then we uncovered something much bigger. As they drove to the outskirts of the city, Chad filled Marcus in on the real story. The Phoenix Group wasn't just a criminal organization, it was a shadow government, manipulating world events from behind the scenes, and they had been watching Marcus long before his fake bankruptcy. Your rise to power wasn't an accident, Chad revealed. The Phoenix Group had been grooming you for years, positioning you as a potential puppet CEO for their operations. Marcus felt sick. So my entire success was orchestrated. Chad shook his head. No, your talent is real. That's why they chose you. But they've been influencing your career, opening doors, eliminating competition. Your fake bankruptcy threw a wrench in their plans. They arrived at a nondescript warehouse. Inside, Marcus was surprised to see a high-tech command center. And there, amid the screens and equipment, stood Sarah. Glad you made it, she said, relief evident in her voice. We've got a lot to discuss. Over the next few hours, Marcus learned the full extent of the operation. Sarah wasn't just a government agent. She was the head of an international task force dedicated to bringing down the Phoenix Group. Chad was her second in command. Now, we've been working on this for years, Sarah explained. Your experiment gave us an unexpected opportunity to accelerate our plans. As they talked, Marcus's phone buzzed. It was a text from Emily. Are you okay? I'm worried. Please call me. Marcus stared at the message, a new wave of doubt washing over him. Is she part of this too? Was our reconnection just another manipulation? Sarah's expression softened. No, Marcus, Emily is genuine. In fact, she's one of the few connections to your past that isn't tainted by the Phoenix Group's influence. This small comfort was short-lived as alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. We've been compromised, Chad shouted, rushing to a computer terminal. They've found us! In the chaos that followed, Marcus found himself separated from Chad and Sarah. Gunshots echoed through the warehouse as he desperately searched for an exit. Just as he thought he was cornered, a hand grabbed him and pulled him into a hidden passage. To his shock, he found himself face to face with Jack Reeves, the man he had thought betrayed him. I know you have no reason to trust me, Jack said urgently, but right now, I'm your only chance of getting out of here alive. As they navigated through a maze of underground tunnels, Jack explained his role. He was a double agent, working for Sarah's task force while maintaining his cover in the Phoenix Group. I couldn't tell you earlier, Jack said. The less you knew, the safer you were. But now you're in too deep. You need to know the truth. They emerged in an abandoned subway station. Jack handed Marcus a flash drive. This contains everything we have on the Phoenix Group. Names, operations, future plans. If anything happens to me, make sure this gets to the right people. Before Marcus could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the station. Jack pushed Marcus towards an exit. Go! I'll hold them off. Marcus hesitated, torn between escaping and helping Jack. In that moment of indecision, a shot rang out. Jack fell, blood blossoming on his shirt. Run! Jack gasped. Find Emily. She's the key to all of this. She knows the truth about your father. As the footsteps grew louder, Marcus made a split-second decision. With a last anguished look at Jack, he ran into the darkness of the tunnel, the flash drive clutched tightly in his hand. As he ran, Marcus's mind whirled with questions. What did Emily have to do with all this? And what truth about his father could possibly be connected to this web of deceit and power? Marcus realized that the game he had started had evolved into something far beyond his control. His journey to test his friends had led him to question everything he thought he knew about his life, his success, and even his own identity. As he emerged onto a deserted street, dawn breaking over the city skyline, Marcus knew that his true test was just beginning. With enemies closing in and the fate of many hanging in the balance, he had to uncover the truth. no matter the cost. Marcus's heart pounded as he navigated the early morning streets, constantly looking over his shoulder. The city he once dominated as a business tycoon now felt alien and hostile. He needed a safe place to gather his thoughts and examine the flash drive Jack had given him, almost unconsciously. His feet led him to a familiar neighborhood in Brooklyn. Before he knew it, he was standing in front of his childhood home, a modest brownstone that seemed frozen in time. On an impulse, he tried the loose brick by the steps where his family had always hidden a spare key. To his surprise, it was still there. As he entered the musty interior, memories flooded back. This was where it all began, long before the wealth, the power, and the lies. Marcus made his way to his old room, now a storage space filled with dusty boxes. As he moved aside some old photo albums, his hand brushed against something hard and metallic. Curious, Marcus pulled out a small safe he'd never seen before. On top of it was an envelope, yellowed with age, addressed to him in his father's handwriting. With trembling hands, he opened it. "My dear son, if you're reading this, then the truth has finally caught up with us. The combination is your mother's birthday. What you'll find inside will change everything. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from this. Remember, the truth will set you free, but first, it will break your heart. Love, Dad." Stunned, Marcus entered the combination. Inside the safe, he found a stack of documents, photographs, and a USB drive. As he began to go through them, the truth of his past unfolded like a dark, twisted fairy tale. His father hadn't been a simple factory worker. He had been an undercover agent, deep within the Phoenix Group. The photographs showed his father with younger versions of the very people Marcus now knew to be at the top of the organization. But his father had a change of heart, planning to expose the group. One photo made Marcus's blood run cold. It showed his father with a young girl, perhaps 7 or 8 years old. On the back was written, "Emily Chen, the key." Just then, Marcus's phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Grand Central Station, Locker 233, 1 hour, come alone." Marcus's mind raced. Emily was connected to all of this. How? Why? Despite the risk, he knew he had to go. Gathering everything from the safe and the flash drive from Jack, Marcus headed out, his past and present on a collision course. At Grand Central, Marcus cautiously approached Locker 233. Inside, he found a burner phone and a note. "Call the only saved number when you're alone and safe." Finding a quiet corner in a nearby park, Marcus dialed the number. Emily's voice came through, tense and hurried. "Marcus, I don't have much time. I'm so sorry for keeping the truth from you. Your father, he saved my life. I was born into the Phoenix Group, groomed to be their perfect agent. Your father helped me escape when I was a child. He placed me with a new family, gave me a chance at a normal life." Marcus's world tilted on its axis. "But our reconnecting, was that planned?" "No," Emily said firmly. "That was fate, or maybe your father's final gift to us both. Marcus, the Phoenix Group is planning something big, something that could destabilize governments worldwide. We need to stop them." "We?" Marcus asked, his head spinning. "Yes, we. Your father left me instructions, fail-safes to bring down the Phoenix Group. But I can't do it alone. Will you help me finish what your father started?" At that moment, Marcus saw movement out of the corner of his eye. A black SUV was pulling up, men in suits emerging. "Emily, I have to go. I think they've found me," Marcus said urgently. "Be careful, Marcus. Remember, trust no one. I'll contact you again. And Marcus, despite everything, what we've shared these past months, it's real." As the line went dead, Marcus started running. The men from the SUV were in pursuit. As he fled, Marcus realized that the endgame was approaching. The truth about his past had been revealed, but the future was still unwritten. With Emily's revelation and his father's legacy weighing on him, Marcus knew that his next moves would determine not just his fate, but potentially the fate of the world. The game he had started as a test of friendship had evolved into a fight for justice, truth, and redemption. As he disappeared into the crowded New York streets, Marcus steeled himself for the battles to come. The final act of his journey was about to begin, and the stakes couldn't be higher. For the next 48 hours, Marcus became a ghost, using every trick he'd learned from his time as both a CEO and a man of modest means to evade capture. He moved through the city's underbelly, sleeping in shelters and abandoned buildings, always one step ahead of his pursuers. During a rare moment of respite in a 24-hour diner, Marcus finally had a chance to examine the contents of his father's USB drive. What he found shook him to his core. Detailed plans, offshore account numbers, blackmail material. His father had collected enough evidence to bring down not just the Phoenix Group, but dozens of corrupt politicians and business leaders worldwide. As he scrolled through the files, a video started playing. Marcus's breath caught in his throat as his father's face appeared on the screen, older and more careworn than he remembered. "Marcus, my son," his father began. "If you're watching this, then I'm no longer able to protect you. I'm sorry for the burden I'm placing on your shoulders, but you're the only one I can trust with this. The Phoenix Group's reach is vast, their influence almost limitless, but they have a weakness, their reliance on a quantum encryption key stored in a secure facility. Destroy that, and their entire network falls apart. Emily knows the location. Find her, finish what I started, and then get as far away from this life as you can. I love you, son. I hope one day you can forgive me." The video ended, leaving Marcus with a maelstrom of emotions. Anger at the deception, grief for the father he'd never truly known, and a burning determination to see this through. His burner phone buzzed, a message from Emily. "Tomorrow, noon, Bethesda Fountain, Central Park. Come alone." As Marcus made his way to the meeting point the next day, he felt eyes on him from every direction. The park seemed too open, too exposed. As he approached the fountain, he spotted Emily sitting on a bench, her face partially hidden by large sunglasses. Before he could reach her, chaos erupted. Armed men in civilian clothes converged from all directions. Tourists screamed and scattered. Emily leapt up, grabbing Marcus's hand. "Run!" They sprinted through the park, weaving through trees and leaping over barriers. Emily led them to a hidden entrance to the park's underground maintenance tunnels. As they raced through the dimly lit passageways, the sounds of pursuit echoed behind them. "We don't have much time," Emily panted as they ran. "The quantum key is stored in a facility upstate. We need to get there within 48 hours before they move it to an overseas location." They emerged from the tunnels near the Hudson River. A nondescript boat was waiting, piloted by a grim-faced man Emily introduced as another former Phoenix Group escapee. As they sped up the Hudson, Emily filled Marcus in on the plan. The facility was a converted military bunker, its security nearly impenetrable. But Emily had an ace up her sleeve, a Phoenix Group defector on the inside, waiting to grant them access. "Once we're in," Emily explained, "we'll have exactly 10 minutes to reach the central server, destroy the quantum key, and get out before the fail-safes lock us in permanently." Marcus absorbed the information, his mind racing. "And after that, what happens to the Phoenix Group?" Emily's expression was grim. "Chaos. Their entire network will collapse. Encrypted files will be exposed. Hidden accounts revealed. It'll be a global shockwave." As night fell, they docked at a small, private marina. A car was waiting to take them the rest of the way. As they drove through the darkness, Marcus turned to Emily. "In all of this, I never asked, why? Why did you agree to help my father? Why continue the fight?" Emily was quiet for a long moment. "Because your father showed me that there was good in the world. That one person could make a difference. He gave me a choice, Marcus. Now, I'm giving us both a chance to make things right." As dawn broke, they arrived at their destination, an unassuming office building surrounded by forest. This was it, the culmination of decades of secrecy, lies, and hidden agendas. Marcus took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his father's legacy, the trust of his newfound allies, and the fate of a world on the brink. Whatever happened in the next few hours would change everything. "Ready?" Emily asked, her hand on the car door. Marcus nodded, his jaw set with determination. Let's finish this. As they stepped out into the cool morning air, neither of them could have predicted the shocking twists and revelations that awaited them inside the Phoenix Group's stronghold. The final battle was about to begin, and nothing would ever be the same. The office building's bland exterior belied the cutting-edge security within. Emily led Marcus to a service entrance where they were met by their inside contact, a nervous-looking man introduced only as Alex. "You have exactly 47 minutes before the shift change," Alex whispered, handing them employee badges. "After that, I can't guarantee your safety." As they made their way through the building, Marcus was struck by how ordinary everything appeared. Cubicles, water coolers, even a few sleepy-eyed employees starting their day. It could have been any office in America. But beneath this mundane veneer lay the nerve center of a global conspiracy. They reached a nondescript door marked Server Room, authorized personnel only. Alex swiped his keycard, ushering them inside. The temperature dropped noticeably as they entered a vast room filled with humming servers. "The quantum key is stored in a specialized containment unit at the center," Emily explained, leading the way. "Once we destroy it, we'll have minutes at most before the system locks down completely." As they approached the central unit, a sleek black monolith pulsing with blue light, alarms suddenly blared. A voice boomed over the intercom. "Security breach detected. Initiating lockdown protocols." "It's a trap," Marcus yelled, spinning around to see armed guards pouring into the room. In the chaos that followed, Marcus lost sight of Emily. He ducked behind a server bank, his mind racing. How had they been discovered? Was Alex a double agent? Or had the Phoenix Group been one step ahead all along? As he weighed his options, a familiar voice cut through the din. "Stand down. Everyone stand down." Marcus peered around the corner to see Senator Harris striding into the room, flanked by more guards. And beside him, to Marcus's utter shock, was Chad. "I'm sorry, Marcus," Chad said, his expression a mixture of regret and determination. "But we couldn't let you destroy everything we've worked for." Senator Harris stepped forward, his voice smooth and controlled. "Mr. Blackwood, I think it's time we had an honest conversation. Your father was a visionary, but he lost sight of the bigger picture. The Phoenix Group isn't a criminal organization. We're the only thing standing between order and chaos." As Harris spoke, screens around the room flickered to life, showing images of wars averted, economies stabilized, disasters prevented. "We operate in the shadows so that the world can live in the light," Harris continued. "Your father understood that once. We hoped you would too." Marcus's mind reeled. Could it be true? Had he misjudged everything? Just then, Emily's voice rang out. She had been captured but was struggling against her captors. "Don't listen to them, Marcus. Show him, Senator. Show him what's behind the curtain." Harris sighed, nodding to one of his men. Another screen lit up, this one showing darker images: political assassinations, engineered conflicts, manipulated markets. "The world isn't black and white, Mr. Blackwood," Harris said quietly. "Sometimes, to create order, you must first engineer chaos. Your father couldn't accept that, can you?" Marcus stood, his hands raised. He looked from Harris to Chad, to Emily, his mind racing. Everything he thought he knew had been turned upside down. In this moment, he held the fate of the Phoenix Group, and perhaps the world, in his hands. "You're right about one thing, Senator," Marcus said slowly. "The world isn't black and white, but neither is it a chessboard for you to manipulate as you see fit." In a flash, Marcus spun around, grabbing a fire extinguisher from the wall. Before anyone could react, he smashed it into the quantum key containment unit. Alarms blared as the unit cracked, a wave of energy pulsing outward. "No!" Harris yelled, but it was too late. Screens around the room began to flicker and die as the Phoenix Group's carefully constructed web of control began to unravel. In the confusion that followed, Marcus grabbed Emily's hand. "We need to get out of here, now!" As they ran, pursued by guards and the sounds of a facility tearing itself apart, Marcus realized that his journey was far from over. He had struck a blow against the Phoenix Group, but the ripple effects would be felt around the world. What would emerge from the ashes of the Phoenix, and what role would he play in shaping the new order? As they burst out into the sunlight, alarms still blaring behind them, Marcus knew one thing for certain: the game had changed, and the real work was just beginning. The next 72 hours were a blur of chaos and revelation. As Marcus and Emily went into hiding, just as Senator Harris had warned. "Did we do the right thing?" Marcus asked Emily on the third night, as they huddled around a small TV broadcasting scenes of protests and panic from around the globe. Emily's face was grim but determined. "We gave the world the truth. What they do with it is up to them." As the initial shock began to subside, a new phase began. Journalists and investigators began piecing together the full scope of the Phoenix Group's activities. To Marcus's surprise, the picture that emerged was more complex than he had imagined. Yes, there had been manipulation and dark deeds, but there were also instances of genuine good. Wars averted, humanitarian crises managed, scientific breakthroughs facilitated. The Phoenix Group's influence had been a double-edged sword, and the world was still grappling with its legacy. On the fifth day, as Marcus was chopping wood outside the cabin, a familiar car pulled up. Chad stepped out, looking haggard and older than Marcus remembered. "I'm not here to arrest you," Chad said, raising his hands. "I'm here to talk." Over coffee, Chad explained the aftermath from the inside. The Phoenix Group had fractured, with various factions vying for control of what remained. Senator Harris had disappeared, presumably into hiding, and the governments of the world were scrambling to fill the power vacuum. "It's a mess out there, Marcus," Chad sighed. "But maybe it's a necessary mess, a chance to rebuild something better." As Chad was leaving, he paused at the door. "Oh, and Marcus, your little bankruptcy experiment. It exposed more than you knew. Some of your real friends have been working behind the scenes, trying to protect you. You might want to reach out to them." This revelation sent Marcus on a journey of reconnection. He reached out to Mike, his old college roommate who had given him a job. To his surprise, Mike had been quietly gathering evidence against some of the Phoenix Group's corporate partners. Sarah, his former assistant, had gone underground but sent a secure message. "You did it, Marcus. Your father would be proud. Stay safe. We'll be in touch when the time is right." Even some of his wealthy acquaintances, whom he had dismissed as fair-weather friends, had been using their influence to shield him from the Phoenix Group's retribution. As weeks turned into months, the world slowly began to stabilize. New alliances formed, reforms were implemented, and a kind of cautious optimism began to emerge. Marcus found himself increasingly drawn into the process of rebuilding, his unique perspective valued by those trying to create a more transparent and equitable system. Emily, with her inside knowledge of the Phoenix Group, became a key advisor to an international task force dedicated to preventing the rise of similar shadow organizations. 1 year after the fall of the Phoenix Group, Marcus stood on the balcony of his old penthouse apartment. He had reclaimed some of his former wealth, but his perspective had been irrevocably changed. The glittering cityscape before him no longer represented a playground for the elite, but a complex ecosystem of lives and stories, each interconnected in ways he was only beginning to understand. As he turned to go back inside, where Emily and a group of friends and allies were waiting to discuss their next moves, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him here. What had started as a simple test of friendship had evolved into a world-changing odyssey of truth, power, and redemption. The game wasn't over, he realized. In many ways, it was just beginning. But this time, he was playing with open eyes and an open heart, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. 5 years had passed since the fall of the Phoenix Group, and the world had changed in ways few could have predicted. Marcus Blackwood, once a titan of industry turned undercover agent, now found himself in a role he never imagined, a bridge between the old world and the new. On this crisp autumn morning, Marcus stood before a packed auditorium at the United Nations. Leaders from around the globe, along with representatives from a new generation of transparent corporations and grassroots organizations, waited to hear his address. 5 years ago, we stood on the brink of chaos, Marcus began, his voice steady and clear. The structures that had governed our world for decades crumbled overnight. We faced a choice: to retreat into fear and division, or to embrace the opportunity for real change. Today, I'm proud to say we chose the latter. As he spoke, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The months after the Phoenix Group's fall had been tumultuous. Economic systems had to be rebuilt, political structures reformed. But from the ashes of the old order, something new and hopeful had begun to emerge. Marcus had played a crucial role in this transition. His unique experience, from wealthy CEO to everyday citizen, from unwitting pawn to active agent of change, gave him a perspective few others could match. He had worked tirelessly, alongside Emily, Chad, and countless others, to shape a more equitable and transparent global system. We've created a world where power is no longer concentrated in the hands of a shadowy few, Marcus continued, where decisions that affect millions are made in the light of day, open to scrutiny and debate. It hasn't been easy. We've faced resistance, setbacks, and moments of doubt, but we've persevered. As he spoke, Marcus's eyes found familiar faces in the crowd. There was Mike, his old college roommate, now heading an international watchdog organization. Sarah sat with a group of reformed Phoenix Group members, their expertise now dedicated to preventing the rise of similar shadow organizations. Even some of his former wealthy peers were present, having embraced a new ethos of social responsibility. But our work is far from over, Marcus said, his tone growing serious. The temptation to accumulate power, to act in the shadows, will always exist. It's up to all of us to remain vigilant, to hold each other accountable, and to remember the lessons of the past. As he concluded his speech, Marcus felt a profound sense of closure. The game he had started years ago, meant to test the loyalty of his friends, had set in motion events that reshaped the world. But it had also reshaped him, stripping away his illusions and revealing the true nature of friendship, power, and purpose. Later that evening, as Marcus stood on the balcony of his hotel room overlooking New York City, Emily joined him. They had become partners in every sense, their shared experiences forging a bond stronger than either could have imagined. "Quite a journey, huh?" Emily said, slipping her hand into his. Marcus nodded, his gaze sweeping over the city skyline. "When I started this, I thought I was just testing my friends. I never imagined that you'd end up changing the world," Emily finished with a smile. "That I'd find my true purpose," Marcus corrected. "That I'd discover what really matters." As they stood there, watching the sun set on a world forever changed by their actions, Marcus felt a deep sense of peace. The game that had started with a simple deception had evolved into something far greater, a quest for truth, justice, and genuine human connection. The future was uncertain, filled with new challenges and unforeseen obstacles. But Marcus knew that whatever came next, he wouldn't face it alone. He had found his true friends, his purpose, and a world worth fighting for. As night fell over the city, Marcus Blackwood, once a man playing a game of deception, now stood as a beacon of truth and change. The greatest plot twist of all, he realized, was not in the events that had unfolded, but in the transformation of his own heart. The game was over, but the real journey of building a better world, of fostering genuine connections, of living with purpose and integrity, was just beginning.